X Risk: How Humanity Discovered Its Own Extinction by Thomas Moynihan. Introduction. Why a History of the Future? Organisms are born, man is made. J. D. Bernal, 1945. There are those exploding worlds on the horizon. Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, 1955. The ancient covenant is in pieces. Man at last knows that he is alone in the unfeeling immensity of the universe, out of which he emerged only by chance. Neither his destiny nor his duty have been written down. The kingdom above or the darkness below, it is for him to choose. Jacques Monod, 1970. This is a book about human extinction. More specifically, it is a book about the history of humans thinking about human extinction. It examines how and when our species first became concerned about its ultimate fate. Because, like all important scientific, philosophical, or ethical ideas, from general relativity to gender equality, in order to become a subject of discussion and debate, this idea first had to be discovered. X Risk reveals the untold story of the various polymaths and pioneers who made this momentous discovery. The story links contemporary debates on topics ranging from superintelligent AIs to design of pandemics, back to the centuries-long globe-spanning drama that made them possible. Along the way, we meet a range of unlikely characters, including Russian princes, romantic geologists, Victorian extra-biologists, and Marxist crystallographers. In retracing the past history of our concern for our future, we learn how today's discussions regarding humanity's long-term fate emerged from and grew out of the broader sweep of human history. And ultimately, retracing this history helps clarify exactly what we take our purpose as intelligent beings to be. The primary contention of the book is that human extinction is a comparatively novel idea, one that remained entirely unavailable for the greater part of our existence as a species. Homo sapiens has been around for 200,000 or 300,000 years, yet it is only over the last couple of centuries that members of the species have begun to acknowledge that it might one day cease to exist forever. For reasons outlined below, during the larger part of the lifespan of humankind, roughly 99.9% of our time on Earth, this was an idea that remained totally beyond our conceptual grasp. At this point, some may feel like interjecting so as to point out that humans have been prophesizing the end of the world since time immemorial. But this is the second major claim of the book, that age-old mythical and biblical prophecies concerning apocalypse are not the same as predictions concerning extinction events. Indeed, apocalypse and extinction are not merely different ideas, they are incompatible and contradictory ones. In short, where apocalypse secures the sense of an ending, extinction anticipates the ending of sense. This distinction will take some unpacking, but for now, note that understanding our own extinction required that we understand ourselves as a biological species within a desacralized cosmos, an image of ourselves and our world that only developed during what historians called the Age of Enlightenment. Of course, the novelty of an idea doesn't necessarily guarantee its importance. But the third claim here is that coming to grasp the prospect of our own extinction has been uniquely important for human civilization. It is a truly path-breaking discovery and ought to be recognized as of one of the defining features of what we call modernity. In fact, it ranks among the most significant intellectual milestones in the history of the human species. What other earthborn species can think upon its own demise, let alone take responsibility for it by using science to predict and perhaps prevent it? No other animal on the planet can assume liability for its own fate in this way. But why look backwards? After all, surely what is important is the future itself, not its history. The answer is that recollecting how we got to our current position, one of simultaneous power and precarity, allows us to present a novel case for why we must expend more effort on protecting the future of the human project, even in spite of the many failures and unforgivable sins that have blighted its past. For assessing the urgent question of existential risk, with this full historical backdrop in view, reveals that caring about human extinction is not merely a niche interest, or some dismissible trend of the present moment, based solely upon histrionic doom-mongering or utopian dreams of immortality. It cannot be rejected as a Silicon Valley fad or a transhumanist craze. Quite the contrary, it has long been an essential and unavoidable component of what it is to be human, even if we only fully recognized this rather recently. The human has come to define itself as the rational animal, a notion that refuses to go away despite the many caustic critiques to which it has been subjected in recent times. To be rational is simply to be responsible for oneself. And being responsible for oneself means nothing if not becoming sensitive to the risks one faces. Indeed, we did not even think about our extinction as an objective event until we properly figured out the moral stakes involved in such a tragedy. Today, we define what we now call existential risks, often abbreviated as X risks, precisely along these lines, as threats that are of unique moral importance because they endanger the very existence of morality in the world, whether by causing our outright extinction or by irreversibly curtailing our potential to achieve good things. Discovering our extinction was thus an essential part of our assuming maturity as rational beings. We were bound to end up caring about it in so far as we are a species that has, over time, submitted itself increasingly to the sole authority of reason over all inherited institutions and beliefs. Besides being a fascinating and colorful story, then this retrospective look on the human concern with X risk casts a new and unique light on why such questions continue to be so monumentally important and ethically obligatory in the present. Only this history can throw into full relief the concrete truth that in some important sense we were duty bound to discover and develop this idea as soon as our species, many generations ago, begun to respond to ethical argumentation. Many arguments for why prevention of existential risk should be a global priority are based on looking forward to the consequences of such events. These are compelling and compulsory, but only by looking backward to the history can we show how these arguments themselves emerge from a wider historical process. This process is what many people have referred to as our coming of age as a civilization and species. That is, our growing accountability and awareness over the ages for the myriad consequences of our actions. From this perspective, we can see that it was in some sense our obligation all along to discover the idea of X risk, because behind this idea lurks the ultimate moral lesson, our ethical responsibility for the continued existence of ethics and responsibility itself. We couldn't really have come of age without having stumbled upon this momentous realization, and we may still have a long way yet to go and a lot to learn. But no matter how fallible we have been and remain, we have at least come far enough to recognize the true gravity of X risk. What unfolds below, then, concerns itself entirely with the central ongoing drama of the history of our species, particularly since it entered its distinctively modern phase. The unavoidable acknowledgement that, in an otherwise sterile and seemingly silent universe, it is up to us to proactively protect our values so as to become answerable to the promise and potential of their future. In both ethical and scientific terms, this recognition is one of our most monumental achievements as a species, and it finds its apex in the modern acknowledgement of existential risk, the fruition of centuries of hard work and human progress. To give an idea, a history of this sort is to legitimize it in the eyes of the present. More so, it is to petition for its future advancement and furtherance. For the ongoing project of human betterment is an undertaking that we inherit from our collective past, but it is also an undertaking that, by this same token, remains incomplete and unfinished, because one isn't truly following the good if one isn't also pursuing the better, so as to supersede the mishaps of the past. And this is why, ultimately, it may just be essential, in light of the existential threats that loom on our collective horizon, to once again champion the Enlightenment notion of humanity as compromising a daring enterprise or vocation. We lost this notion somewhere among the disillusionments of the 19th and 20th centuries, but its time may have arrived once again, given that, across the centuries, we have come to acknowledge that the human project is something that can either succeed or fail. And the more we accept responsibility for this truth, the more we are compelled to do that which is prudent and righteous within the world of the present. Perhaps now is a time for such a guiding ideal. The road ahead seems to be getting darker by the year, but there is also cause for hope. By retreading the upswells and downturns of our past, we gain a firmer understanding of how we can live up to our human vocation as it continues to unfold during these opening centuries of the second millennium. In an age of growing global disillusionment, risk, uncertainty, and precarity, and how we can carry it forward into the stupendously far future. In short, this recollection of how we first came to care is also a call for us to continue to care, and to continue to care as never before, inasmuch as the coming century is, by many accounts, likely to be our riskiest one yet. The stakes have never been higher. We have never had a clearer sense of the true scope of our potential should we survive into the long-term future. Let us then study this history so as to not fail in our duty to build a better future, one that is not impeded by our past or even by the limits of our home planet.